Welcome to Language Swap, everyone, a fun way to learn English. We are so excited to have you join us today.
Hey, Sally. Remember that video I mentioned last episode? The one claiming a secret CIA method teaches any language in 11 days.
I remember, and I believe we actually have someone who can speak to this a lot better than we can today.
We do. We have a guest joining us, someone who spent years working in intensive government language training, and we're truly excited for this conversation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Sally.
And I'm Alex. And today we have a guest with us, so let's welcome him properly.
Welcome to the show. Would you like to introduce yourself a little for our listeners?
Thanks for having me, both of you. I'll go by Marcus for this conversation. And I spent a good chunk of my career around federal language training programs, including some time adjacent to intelligence work.
Adjacent to intelligence work already sounds like the beginning of a very careful sentence.
You'll find a lot of my sentences today are going to be carefully worded. Honestly, some things I just can't get specific about, even years later.
That's completely understood, and honestly, I think that carefulness itself is going to be interesting for our listeners.
This episode's level B1 to C1, by the way. And if you've ever seen one of those secret method videos and wondered what's actually real, today's exactly for you.
And if you're a little below that level, stay with us anyway. This conversation is worth following closely.
Quick favor before we start. If you're enjoying the podcast, please like this episode and subscribe. It really helps more people find us.
Okay, let's actually get into it. Marcus, let's start with the obvious question everyone's thinking. Is there actually a secret CIA method that teaches a language in 11 days?
Honestly, no. And I say that pretty confidently. The 11-day number isn't something I've ever encountered in any real training context, government or otherwise.
So where does the real story actually come from? Then, if it's not 11 days,
The real foundation most of these videos are loosely borrowing from is the Foreign Service Institute, which trains State Department diplomats, not intelligence officers specifically. Though the training philosophy does overlap with other federal programs too.
So even the CIA part of the title is already a bit of a stretch.
A pretty significant stretch, yes. FSI is public. It's the State Department. And honestly, that's not nearly as exciting a title as Secret CIA Method. So I understand why people round it up.
what was your actual day-to-day like, if you can share that part?
I can share the general shape of it. Sure. Long days, typically 6 to 7 hours of classroom instruction, plus additional hours of homework and memorization at night.
That's such a specific number. Did it ever feel like too much, honestly, in the moment?
Constantly, if I'm being fully honest, there were nights I fell asleep with vocabulary flashcards still in my hand, which sounds a little dramatic, but actually happened more than once.
That's such a relatable image, actually, for anyone who's ever crammed for something important.
It really is universal, honestly. Exhaustion doesn't care what your job title is.
What did the actual classroom structure look like? Was it more lecture-based or something different?
Much more interactive than a typical classroom, honestly. Small groups, sometimes just 2 or 3 students with one instructor and constant speaking practice, not passive listening.
So you couldn't really hide in the back of the room and just absorb quietly.
Not even slightly possible, no. You were expected to produce the language out loud, constantly, mistakes and all, from very early on.
Did that pressure ever feel discouraging, especially early on when you were still making a lot of mistakes?
It did. Especially the first few weeks. But I think that early discomfort was actually the whole point, honestly. Forcing you past the fear of sounding wrong out loud.
I want to ask something a little more specific, actually, if you're comfortable sharing. Was there a moment you remember feeling like something had actually clicked?
There's one specific day I remember clearly, actually. We were doing a listening exercise, fairly advanced material, and I realized halfway through that I wasn't translating anymore, I was just understanding directly.
That's such a specific, meaningful moment to actually remember this clearly.
It truly stuck with me, yes. It wasn't dramatic, outwardly. Nobody in the room even noticed anything different. But internally, something had definitely shifted.
Was that moment early in the program, or did it take a while to get there?
Later than I expected, honestly. I want to say close to 4 months into fairly intensive daily training before that specific shift happened for me.
4 months of intensive daily effort, not 11 days.
Not 11 days, correct. And that was actually considered a fairly quick timeline within the program itself for the specific language I was working on.
I have to ask, and feel free to decline this one completely, but was your specific placement or assignment something you can talk about at all?
I appreciate you asking directly, but that's actually one of those areas I have to stay vague on. Even now, I can talk about the training itself pretty openly, but not the specific placements that followed it.
That actually makes the whole conversation feel more credible, honestly, hearing you draw that line clearly instead of just making something up to sound impressive.
I appreciate you saying that. Honestly, I'd rather say I can't share that than invent something dramatic just to make a better story.
I want to bring up the drilling and repetition piece too, actually, since I think that's the part most viral videos skip over completely.
Oh, that's such an important piece, honestly, and probably the least glamorous part of the whole process. Repeating the same phrases and patterns out loud over and over, sometimes for what felt like an unreasonable amount of time.
Did that repetition ever feel tedious, or did it start feeling useful pretty quickly?
Tedious for a long time before it felt useful, honestly. I don't think anyone honestly enjoys drilling the same sentence structure repeatedly, but looking back, that's honestly where a lot of the real progress was quietly happening.
So the boring part was actually doing most of the heavy lifting the whole time.
Exactly that. In my experience, nobody wants to hear repeat this phrase 40 times a day in a video title, but that's much closer to the real story than any secret trick.
I want to ask about testing too, since I imagine there was constant evaluation throughout.
Frequent testing, yes, almost uncomfortably, frequent at times. Regular oral evaluations specifically, not just written tests, which added a different kind of pressure entirely.
Speaking pressure specifically, live in the moment rather than just answering on paper.
Exactly that pressure, and honestly, that's probably the piece that translates best to anyone learning independently too. Speaking out loud regularly, even when it's uncomfortable, matters more than most people realize.
If someone listening right now doesn't have access to anything like formal government training, what would you actually tell them to borrow from your experience?
Speak daily, even alone if you have to. Don't wait until you feel ready, because that feeling took me months to arrive naturally, not days. And accept that the boring repetition is doing more work than it feels like in the moment.
That's such grounded, practical advice, honestly, especially coming from someone who lived the actual intensive version of it.
I think that's really the most useful thing I can offer, honestly. Not a secret, just confirmation that consistent, sometimes tedious effort is the real method, dressed up as something far more dramatic online.
I think that's such an important note to end this part of the conversation on, honestly, especially with how much misinformation floats around this exact topic.
I want to ask something a little different. Actually, Marcus, did the intensity of that training ever burn people out? People who truly wanted to succeed but just couldn't sustain the pace?
Absolutely. Yes. I watched people who were clearly talented struggle, not because they lacked ability, but because the pace itself was brutal on top of everything else going on in their lives.
What typically happened in those cases? Did the program just push people out, or was there support available?
There was support, generally, extra tutoring, schedule adjustments where possible, but Honestly, some people did wash out, and it wasn't always about talent. Sometimes it was just timing, life circumstances, things outside the classroom entirely.
That's such an honest thing to admit, actually, since a lot of secret method content implies success is purely about following the right system.
I think that's honestly one of the most misleading parts of how this whole topic gets presented online. The system matters, sure, but so does circumstance, sleep, stress, everything happening in a person's life outside the classroom.
Did you personally ever come close to that point where the pace felt unsustainable for you?
Honestly, yes. Around the 2-month mark specifically, I remember seriously wondering if I'd made a mistake taking on that particular language, given how far behind I felt compared to classmates.
What actually got you through that specific stretch?
An instructor, honestly, who told me something I still think about. She said progress in that program wasn't measured day to day. It was measured in months, and comparing myself to yesterday was setting an impossible standard.
That's such a generous, practical piece of advice, actually, from someone who'd clearly seen a lot of students struggle with that exact comparison trap.
She'd seen it constantly, I think. Students burning themselves out comparing daily progress instead of trusting the longer timeline the whole program was actually built around.
I want to ask one more thing, actually, since I think our listeners would find this really useful. Looking back now, was it worth the difficulty, honestly?
Completely worth it. Yes. Though I don't think I could have told you that confidently while I was still in the middle of it. It's much easier to see the value looking backward than while you are still living through the hardest stretch.
That's such a fitting way to close this part of the conversation, actually, since that's actually been a theme across other episodes, too. Real change only really making sense once you're looking back at it.
I think that's true of most truly difficult things, honestly, not just language training specifically.
All right, let's slow down and go through the important words from today.
Our first word is intensive.
Intensive. Let's slow that word down.
Intensive means involving a large amount of effort or concentration in a short, focused period of time.
In today's episode, we talked about intensive daily training being the real engine behind serious language progress.
You could say the training was intensive, several hours a day, without exception.
Or intensive effort, not a secret trick, explains most real progress.
Our next word is vague.
Vague, an important one today.
Vague means not clear or specific, often used deliberately when someone can't or won't share full details.
In today's episode, we talked about Marcus staying vague about specific placements even years later.
You could say he stayed vague about that part on purpose.
Or it's fine to stay vague about something you're not able to fully share.
Our next word is tedious.
Tedious, worth sitting with for a second.
Tedious means boring and repetitive, often used to describe necessary but unexciting effort.
In today's episode, we talked about drilling and repetition feeling tedious even while quietly building real skill.
You could say the repetition was tedious, but actually effective over time.
Or tedious effort often matters more than exciting effort.
Our next word is credible.
Credible. Let's break that one down.
Credible means believable or trustworthy, often based on honesty rather than exaggeration.
In today's episode, we talked about Marcus becoming more credible specifically by admitting what he couldn't share.
You could say his honesty about the limits made him more credible.
Or admitting uncertainty can actually make someone sound more credible.
Our final word is grounded.
Grounded, our final word for today.
Grounded means realistic and practical based on genuine experience rather than exaggeration or fantasy.
In today's episode, we talked about Marcus's advice feeling grounded based on real, lived training experience.
You could say his advice felt grounded, not exaggerated at all.
Or grounded advice usually sounds less exciting, but it's far more useful.
So today's words are intensive, vague, tedious, credible, and grounded.
And they connect perfectly to today's whole message.
Intensive. Sometimes tedious effort is the real story, and staying vague about what you can't share can actually make you more credible.
Grounded advice, not viral drama, is usually what actually helps.
And that takes us right into Say It Better.
This is where we take simple sentences and make them sound more natural and more confident.
First sentence, the training was really hard every single day.
Honest, but let's sharpen it.
A stronger way to say it would be, the training was truly intensive, several hours daily without exception.
That version sounds more specific and more credible.
Next sentence, I can't tell you where I actually worked.
Direct, but a little blunt.
A better version would be, I have to stay a bit vague about my specific placement even now.
That version sounds more natural and less like a flat refusal.
Next sentence, repeating the same thing was really boring.
Relatable, but let's elevate it.
A more natural version would be, the repetition felt tedious, but it was quietly doing most of the real work.
That version reframes the boredom as useful, not wasted.
Next sentence, he seemed honest, so I believed him.
Simple. Let's build on it.
A stronger version would be, his honesty about the limits actually made him sound more credible.
That version explains exactly why the trust was earned.
Final sentence, his advice was simple, but it made sense.
Good instinct already before hearing the polished version.
A more polished version would be, his advice felt grounded, practical, and based on real experience, not exaggeration.
That version sounds like a genuine review, not just a vague compliment.
And that's a good place to end. Say it better.
On intensive effort over instant shortcuts.
On staying credible even when staying vague.
On grounded advice from someone who actually lived it.
Marcus, before we let you go, is there anything else you'd want listeners to take away from this conversation?
Just that the real story is almost always less exciting than the viral version, but far more useful if you actually want results. Show up daily, expect it to feel tedious sometimes, and trust that it's working, even when you can't feel it yet.
That's such a useful note to end on, honestly. Thank you so much for joining us today, Marcus.
Thanks for having me, both of you. This was really fun, even with all my careful vagueness sprinkled throughout.
We appreciated every carefully worded sentence.
Okay, before we wrap up, here's something to actually do this week, not just think about.
Pick one phrase in the language you're learning and repeat it out loud, deliberately, at least 20 times today.
Not because it's exciting, but because tedious repetition is apparently doing more work than any of us realize.
Tell us in the comments, what's one secret method claim you've seen online that you'd love us to actually fact-check next?
Keep it real, keep it specific.
If today's episode helped you see through a viral claim while still learning something genuinely useful, share it with someone who needs both the truth and the real technique.
And Marcus, thank you again, honestly, for being willing to share what you could, even with all the parts you couldn't.
That honesty felt more useful than any dramatic story I could have invented instead.
We completely agree. Sometimes I can't share that specific part is a far more credible answer than any exciting fabrication would have been.
Which is really the whole spirit of this episode in a way, real grounded truth, even with its limits, over an exciting but hollow shortcut. Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
We'll see you in the next episode.